Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. I was thinking to myself just a few seconds before I hit record here, I was thinking to myself, I wonder, will the title of this episode put people off, or will it make them curious? And so if you're here, well done. I respect curious, because I guess I'm curious myself. And I do believe that I'm going to give you some good food for thought in this particular episode. I've been doing what I'm doing, working and helping people, I guess, in different ways to create, what meaningful success is to them, and to kind of help them navigate and in some cases do some incredible things. In other cases, just, I suppose, maybe figure out that there's nothing really wrong with them. Now, most people, if you get into a conversation, will say, I don't think there's anything wrong with me. But you might be surprised at the subtleties around thinking there's something wrong with you, because I find the majority of normal people actually at some level think that there is something wrong with them. But so to lead us into this, and let's see where we go with it. I think the biggest problem with most people, the actual biggest problem, is that most people are thinking something is wrong with them when there isn't. And they kind of get caught up with their thinking. And that is a massive problem, bigger than most people realize. If you said this to me now 10 years ago, I'm not sure I probably would have got it. So let's see where Shane can take us now. Or is he just talking BS? Anyway, I suppose if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you'll have a little bit of an understanding as to why maybe I might be saying this. If you don't, I probably suggest going back to the early podcasts. But I do see that our minds have an amazing capacity to think that there's problems where there's none, and also, as a result, create problems where there's none. And as somebody said to me before, Shane, you got to make sure that you're focusing on the right problem and not on a problem that isn't there. And when I'm working with people, that's generally something that is very much in my mind, in my attention, is this the real problem? Or is this the pretendy problem? I'm always looking for what's the cause. Now, when I was in my depression in my 20s, I was absolutely convinced that there was something wrong with me. And I think logically you think, oh, well, there must be something wrong with you because I was depressed. But I have a very different take on that now. And I think some of what I'm going to say here today, probably not conventional. Maybe I'll annoy some people with this, but this is how I see it now from my own experience. When I was depressed like that, there was a part of me thinking, well, I should feel better. I'm feeling off. There's obviously something wrong with me. And so you go down the conventional route of talking to counselors, all of which is very practical and useful. In some cases, maybe you go to medication because I think there's something wrong with me. And maybe there's stuff right deep down. I think, well, I'm kind of reasonably normal, but in this area, there's something wrong with me. Now, if somebody you knew was having a nightmare, like, they go to sleep and they're having a bad dream, a nightmare, and it's really upsetting them, what would you do? I mean, you have to be careful, but for me, I try and wake them up. If my wife Judy has ever had a nightmare and she's shouting or screaming, it doesn't happen often, but it has happened. I have to try and wake her up. Now, if you're in the nightmare and somebody appeared to you in the nightmare and said, hey, this isn't real, I'm not sure it would make any sense then, because when you're going through the nightmare, you experience it as real. That's why we can wake up shouting or sweating or just be absolutely terrified. When you're in a nightmare, it's very real. That's the power of your mind. But what most people don't consider is that your life is the exact same. When you're walking about your day-to-day life, your mind is playing thinking. It's projecting these little movies and stories about you, about the people around you, about the people you meet. Have you ever considered that some days you wake up and you're thinking, oh, life is fantastic, and you go about your day, And maybe another day, a few days later, you wake up and think, oh, my life is crap. It could be the exact same sort of day, but you experience it very differently. And that is the power, not just of your mind, but also of bringing thought to life. And in essence, in a nightmare, you're just believing a thought movie. And you wake up and go, oh, thanks be to God, that wasn't real. But has anybody ever considered the kind of the same thing is happening during our day-to-day life? Your mind's playing movies all the time about the past, about what it thinks the future is going to be, and even about the present. So I remember a CEO who, in very simple terms, that came to me because when we got into it, he said he'd lost his mojo, i.e., there's something wrong with me. Now, they might never say it like that, but that's kind of what he's thinking. And if he'd been able to accept that the biggest problem was thinking that there was something wrong with them. Now, you could say to me, yeah, but he had lost his mojo. And I would say, yeah, that's fine, because that can happen to anybody, right? At any time for different reasons. But if you start to stew on it as a problem, you start to make it into a bigger problem. And if he had just accepted that, oh, I'm thinking I've lost my mojo, that's fine, but this is going to pass, he kind of would have moved through it. I'm not saying he wouldn't have made changes or maybe looked after his diet or sleep or maybe come up with a new goal or whatever. But the fact that he went down this tunnel of, I've got a problem, I've lost my mojo, then it starts to become a bigger problem. I wonder, does that make any sense to you? And I'm not saying that if you feel, in some cases, well, actually, I have a problem here, or I feel a bit stuck. If you feel a bit stuck, well, that is a version of a problem. And it is useful going to a professional, although I think you need to be careful what professionals you go to. It's always useful to talk things out with a friend or a mentor or coach or a professional counselor, therapist, whatever. You just got to make sure that they don't keep bringing you back into the nightmare. That you're not just talking, like if you're in the nightmare and you're talking about the nightmare, not acknowledging the fact that it's made up by thought, does that make any sense to you? And before you dismiss this, maybe thinking, oh, well, look, there's nothing really wrong with me. I'm pretty cool. Good for you, but I still think it might relate to you because it comes up in different ways. So you could be good at X, but maybe not so good at Y. And if you look at maybe not so good at Y, you might have your own logic as to why that is. But I wonder, is it something to do with your thinking and thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me in that area? For example, I've met people who excel in business, but they kind of say to themselves, yeah, something wrong with me when it comes to relationships. It doesn't quite work out. Or indeed vice versa. Like, I'm really good at relationships, but I don't know, something wrong with me when it comes to business or making money. I mean, again, the common denominator to me is your mind and your thinking. Or you could say, well, I'm really good at people, but I'm not so good with my health or losing weight or being the right weight. Or maybe, I'm really good in a certain context, but when it comes to small spaces, yeah, there's kind of something wrong with me. Again, it's getting caught up with the thinking around that. And that's the bit that I'm pointing to today. Somebody else might say, well, I'm really good at getting stuff done in a work context around this area, but on this area, I kind of tend to procrastinate. There's kind of something wrong with me in that area. So it can be very subtle, very, very subtle. So before we dismiss it, maybe just consider, well, okay, think about, is there an area of your life or your work that actually it's not ideal in terms of the way that I'd like it to be? I wonder how I'm thinking about myself in that context. And I wonder, maybe there's an opportunity to look at, well, what am I saying to myself in terms of my thinking? What's the thought movie in that context? And I wonder, could I step out of that nightmare? Could it be that simple? I think a lot of this stuff is simpler than maybe people think. I'm not saying it doesn't require digging or exploration or reevaluation. But what if, instead of putting our energy into figuring out what's wrong with us, instead I put that energy into just living? If I was back with Shane when he was in depression, I mean, it mightn't make any sense to Shane. I don't know. It took me a while to kind of understand what I'm even saying to you. But if I was back there talking to Shane, who was in the depression in his mid-20s, I'd be kind of saying, dude, stop thinking what you're thinking. What if there's nothing wrong with you? Just get on with your life and get on. You still have to figure things out. There's still be learnings to be done, but that's part of life. You have to learn. You have to figure things out. You got to step into the pain. I wasted so much time, I have to be honest. trying to solve problems in myself that when I look back, weren't really there. They were just in the nightmare that I had created for myself. And I have a choice as to whether or not I want to put attention into certain types of thought movies or not. And from my perspective, the only thing that is wrong with you is maybe just believing the thinking that's telling you that something is wrong with you. I hope that makes some kind of sense. Anyway, even if it doesn't, that's me for today. Over and out. Ciao.